Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my Finding My Way podcast. This is podcast number 30, titled Reunion. Reunion is a story from my adult years. The collection of stories I have written and am reading to you cover many subcultures in our country that I have interacted with from childhood to my adult and senior years. A more extensive introduction to the Finding My Way stories takes place in the beginning of Podcast 1. Regardless of which podcast you are listening to, you will find the story both entertaining and worthy of your reflective thoughts concerning its contents. The stories, as a collection, provide insight into a span of time that has played a role in shaping American culture and influencing its future. The stories provide you with a sense of admiration for the culture's collective courage and our country's commitment to justice and its optimistic willingness to address new challenges. Reunion. It had been 5 years since the last Washington High School reunion. This one was particularly special. 50 years is a long time. The classmates came from all over the country, even though the majority of them still lived in the old borough just outside the Pittsburgh city limits. Last night's banquet was primarily for our 1960 class of graduates and their spouses. There were around 100 members of the class. About 55 of those graduates were in attendance. Today's picnic included members from other classes before and after ours. My dear wife Anna and I arrived at the picnic right on time. Small groups had already formed with sodas or beers in hand. They were laughing and becoming reacquainted through friendly greetings and sideward glances at name tags. After getting our tags of identification, which thankfully included the year of graduation, we mingled. Following the first awkward conversations, primarily oriented to establish the idea of the persons in the group, I excused myself to visit the restroom. It is an excellent strategy for withdrawing from the pressure of talking to strangers. At my age, I had gotten fairly comfortable with acknowledging that I needed to use the bathroom. The vast majority of the former high school students were strangers to me. They all knew each other well. Most of them had been in school together since kindergarten or first grade. My family had moved into the community at the start of the second semester of my sophomore year. That group of young people had been especially nice to me. They quickly embraced me into their social subgroups. I made lifelong friendships, even though my family moved out of state the year after graduation. However, outside of that close circle of friends, I did not interact with very many others from the classes before or after ours. There was one exception to that. It was the football team. I had been a contributor. This allowed me contact with older and younger players. Being on the football team had definitely given me a degree of status then and now. It was time to leave the men's room and return to the gathering. Picking up a diet soda, I walked across the grass to the registration table where Anna was talking to a group of 5, 6, 7 or so women. I knew 2 or 3 of them. After receiving quick hellos from the ones I knew and bright smiles from the ones I didn't, I stood beside sweet Anna. She was being her bubbly self, engaging the women in conversation through her artful questioning. You're Jerry, The lady immediately to my front said to me in an excited voice. It took me and the others by surprise. It was definitely a conversation stopper. I had no idea as to who she was. I came here specifically to see you. I did. I came specifically to apologize. I need to apologize to you. I was stunned. My mind raced. Who was she? What was she talking about? Is this a joke? No. She flushed in the face and agitated. What had happened between us 50 years or so ago? You don't know who I am, do you? She exclaimed as she stepped up holding her blouse out for me to get a better look at her name tag. Well, no, I muttered, straining to read her name tag. Betty Sue something in Hampton at the bottom, with a class of 58. She was a senior when I was a sophomore. No bells ringing as I stammered and stuttered, backing slightly as she pushed her name tag closer. Looking at her face, and then back at her name tag, and then back at her serious stare, then, Hampton, you're with Russell, I shouted. Yes, you remember. It flooded back into my thoughts. For a fraction of a second, I relived the moment. I hadn't been at the school much more than a month. I stayed late after school that day for some reason. The day was dark, cold, and miserable. Immediately, I remembered it with all the details. No one was outside the school. The cold had quickly driven everyone indoors. I was walking on the opposite side of the street from the football field, hunkered down inside my heavy winter coat. The duplex we lived in was just off the end of the field on the street to the right. My name was being shouted out. Stopping, I turned to see Russell running to catch up to me. He was rapidly approaching me while displaying a big grin. Maybe he was going to say he understood and it was over. I waited. Panting, he ran right up to me. I was smiling back at him. He ran right up to me so that his thin coat was pressing mine. I sensed the uppercut rushing to connect with my chin and pulled back as it lightly brushed the cold skin of my face. I knew exactly what she meant. She saw the recognition in my eyes. Smiling as I recovered from my momentary loss of composure, I mumbled something like, there's no need. You are so sweet. Thank you, but no. I've waited all this time. I needed to tell you. Did you marry him? Yes, we had 3 children. How is he? He died of melanoma 14 years ago. I'm sorry. Moving away from the group of women who were silently puzzled by this brief but intense exchange, Betty Sue explained, I was shocked when they asked me if I had heard about the fight behind the football field. I don't know. I didn't know it would. We had moved far enough from the others to have a degree of privacy as she continued. He was always getting into trouble. The class hood. He beat people up, mostly almost flunked out. We dated on and off after the Marines. That had changed him. He came back from Vietnam different. He completed college in 2.5 years. The Marines, something happened to him. He was different. He became an auto body teacher at the vocational school. He did it for years. That's wonderful, I stated in support of her enthusiasm. Did he have brothers or sisters? There were a pack of kids at his house. None of them were treated right. They were poor. It was a bad home life. The conversation continued, but I was having trouble following it. Memories and related emotions were flooding my consciousness. It was remarkable that she knew what she had done. She had carried it with her all this time. At one point I heard her say, "Having two boys fighting over me was..." And then my mind raced on. This event had been with me all these years. Anna and I had discussed it several times during our married life. I had thought it was an old story, long forgotten, when it was smashed into my face during the 30th reunion gathering. Anna hadn't come with me at that one. "Well, you stayed as lovely as you were then," I said with such skill that she blushed again. This time even her ears turned red. As Anna and I excused ourselves from the group and were walking away, I whispered to her, "She really owed me that apology." "Not now. We'll talk later," she said as we approached another clutch of old-timers, laughing and waving their cold drinks in the air as greatness was discussed with glee. The reunion organizers, always the same group of class members for the most part, had thought I'd been killed in Vietnam back in the late 60s and given up trying to reach me after several failed attempts to contact me for earlier gatherings. They did get an address from my undergraduate school for the 25th gathering. That was the first one I attended. The 30th was the second. At the 30th reunion, several of us were riding in a car going out for a late-night meal at one of those all-night breakfasts served 24 hours a day restaurants. 4 old friends crowded into the car after finishing the PM hours in a local pub. I liked these guys. We all agreed this 30th reunion was the best. I was riding shotgun. My good friend Sam, the reunion organization hub, was driving. Our class leader, Tom, a class member beloved and admired by all, was in the back seat with Joe. I didn't know Joe all that well. He was on the fringes of our close-knit group. He never came to Tom's house on Saturday nights after we had dropped our dates off to play hearts or poker. He was just a little on the hood side. Now, don't get me wrong, he was okay. It was just that I didn't know him as well as the others. They had gone all the way through elementary school and into high school together. They all knew each other. Sam and Joe had remained in the Pittsburgh area after graduation. Tom and I lived many states away. The conversation was flowing and prompting spontaneous laughter as we tooled down the road, remembering landmarks. It was good to be with old friends. Then the bombshell hit. There was a pause in the conversation. Abruptly, Joe filled it. "I had a beer the other night with Russell Hampton. He was in the Marines for Vietnam." God almighty, that name. Those memories flooded back. Specifically addressing me, Joe said, "Russell said he won that fight. He said he had you pinned to the ground. He was straddling you with your arms pinned to the ground. He said that he was holding you down until that store owner came out and said he was calling the cops. Is that true?" A question seared through my mind. Why was a guy 50 years old still bringing up a fight he had his senior year of high school with a sophomore? This was bad. Why was this being kept alive? Why was he keeping it fresh this late in his life? Russell's mentioning this incident at this point had to be part of a larger drama in his life. "Yes," came my muted reply as I looked out the passenger side window. There was so much to tell, so much more. The details told a more complicated story. "Well, why did you let us all believe that you had won it? Why did you say you had won it?" I stared out the window as the car passed the houses on either side of the street. My mind raced with thought. Seconds of silence that lasted for years passed with each rhythmic bump on the tires of the road. How could I answer? What would be a simple enough explanation? Every part of me was tense. Russell lived here. His ego was tied up in this. I would leave the state the next day. This was Russell's home. For some reason, he needed to know he was the victor of the fight. That needed to be known. He needed to justify himself. This was how he defined himself. These friends of mine would think I deceived them. I never said I won the fight. I told whoever would listen to the details of it. I was truthful. The details told the truth. I had him, and he knew it. He knows it. If I tell it now, will he seek me out and attack? Would I have to pit my Army training against his as a Marine? He would lose. I knew the basic training given Marines. It was not a match for the advanced training I had received. If the fight came, it would be desperate. My friends will think I'm a liar and a coward if I don't get the truth out. This is really important to Russell. Can I let him have his victory, even though he knows it's not real? They don't know the manipulations done by the girl. They only know that he said he won. He said he had me pinned, and I lied. Could I endure my friends thinking I was less than I was? All these thoughts raced through my mind during this long period of unspoken words. From the back of the seat, Tom broke the silence. I think it's time to change the subject. We got to the restaurant. After ordering breakfast 2 or 3 hours before the sun would rise, we told funny stories. We laughed a while, and then we all went our separate ways. Joe's question and the related issues were never brought up. I guess we were all carefully avoiding it for reasons only known to each of our private selves. Over the years, I would reflect on the possibility of clearing my name with these guys. I never brought it up again, nor did they. I had thought about it at strange times as the years slipped by. What if I had told the story? How would it have changed Russell's life? There's no doubt his life would have changed. I could let him live in his community with those he valued, thinking he was what? He knew what he was. I did not. I could never violate his need to be honored and respected as he wanted to be respected. If my friends thought less of me with this untruth in the air, then it was the way it was. As years passed, this moment would flicker in and out of my thoughts. The four of us in the car, the question, the long silence, and then time to change the subject. I doubted that he ever saw the girl after high school. He probably had a laborer's job, and his Marine experiences to keep him company at the beer joints he frequented. If I did tell the story, would he seek me out? Would I really be able to defend myself? My combat training did teach me one thing. You would survive because you knew what had to be done, and you knew that you would do it. Betty Sue's need to apologize at this moment, at the 50th reunion, triggered all these thoughts and answered my fantasy questions. He did see the girl after high school. When he got out of the Marines, he was a changed man. He was driven to make something of his life. He was successful. He married the girl, completed college, was a secondary school teacher for years, and raised 3 children. He had been dead for 14 years. I knew little of the truth about the man. What I had thought was the truth about the kind of life he led after high school was simply my fantasy, and in the process I was doing him a great injustice just to feed my ego. I was free to tell the story. Tom and Sam were here at the reunion. I could clear my name. The old British black and white movie, Four Feathers, suddenly popped into my head. The accused coward, the main character of the movie, was a soldier fighting in the desert with his friends. I knew how the principal character must have felt as he sent a feather back to each of the 4 friends as a symbol of his honor. Each of them had rejected him as a coward through sending him a feather. As I remember the film, after the war, each accuser received the feather he'd been given to the alleged coward. As each of them looked at the returned feather, he recalled being saved by a native who was the disgraced hero in disguise. Our hero knew he had been redeemed. Well, I wasn't totally freed. If I told either of them the true story, I'd want to do it in such a way as not to embarrass Betty Sue. I particularly wanted to tell Tom. At this picnic, as it wore on, I found myself seeking quiet spots, reflecting on that winter day 53 years ago. It began in the gym. The mixed grade gym class was over. We were standing outside the locker room waiting for the bell to ring. Then we would go upstairs to our last class of the morning. I really didn't know many of the guys. You couldn't have expected me to know many of them. I had been attending the school a little less than a month. There were a few seniors in this class. A couple of them were representative of the stereotypical hoodlum bad group. You know, ducktail hair, shirt sleeves rolled up, developed arm muscles being flexed in an attitude that said, "I might stomp you if you look at me in just the wrong way." They weren't the kind of guys a skinny sophomore wanted to irritate unless he wanted trouble. I had left a community in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin that was dominated by these guys. I had managed to hold my own there. I didn't want to return to that way of life. It tended to be more violent than was my nature. Bam! 2 hands slammed into my chest. My back crushed into the wall. I was pinned. The fists held my shirt tight at the neck and pressed me to the wall. The worst of the senior hoods had me in his grip. Everyone was stunned. "You've been messing with my girl. Don't you talk to her again. Don't you even look at her, or I'll get you. I'll beat the shit out of you," he hissed into my face. I was mad. I was scared. He was so much stronger than I was. I'm not going to let him bully me. If he thinks he can get by with this, my life is hell. I know the drill. If we go at it now, I'll get kicked out of school. Just who in the hell is this girl? What is he talking about? Raising my arm and pointing my finger in his face while he still pinned me, I fixed my best Gregory Peck stare on him. With great anger, but in quiet, controlled, I stated, "I'll talk to anyone I want. I don't know who your girl is, and I don't care. Mess with me again and you'll pay. Unfortunately, my eyes always tear up when I'm really angry. I was really angry. He saw my eyes watering up. The smile on his face told me he thought I was crying. I was afraid. He thought he had me. This made me madder. This meant that he would be bolder. What's going on here? You boys break it up. The bell has rung. Get to your classes, the elderly gym teacher ordered. Just as quickly as I was grabbed, I was released. We dispersed rapidly. Word spread quickly through the small high school of 500 9th through 12th grader students. Russell Hampton had cornered the new kid, me. I asked some of my newfound friends who his girlfriend was. She was Betty Sue Brown, a senior too. They discreetly pointed her out to me. I had never seen her before. There was no reason for me to notice her. We clearly did not have any classes together. She was not particularly attractive to me, even though there was reason to understand why she might be to someone else. I could not allow myself to be intimidated by him, nor could I allow him to think that he had done so. That would be a living hell. I had seen it too many times in too many schools as my family moved across the Midwest. It was better to stand and fight and get the crap kicked out of you than to fight again and lose again rather than becoming the easy prey of the bully. I hated being in this position once again. It just repeated itself over and over in every new school. One good thing had come out of it. I had acquired seasoned fighting skills. My early boxing lessons had become invaluable in these situations. Sadly, my body did not openly communicate these skills. I was wiry in body build. At a casual glance, you might even call me skinny. More heavily muscled boys my age would be amazed that they could not beat me at arm wrestling. On top of that, I did try to use various social strategies to solve a conflict rather than immediately fighting my way out of it. Sadly, at least one good fight was forced on me at every new school. So far, I'd never lost one. If it came to fighting Russell, I risked losing my perfect record. He was clearly much stronger than me, and he had a truly mean look in his eye. Damn, I wish my eyes hadn't watered up in that confrontation. A few days after identifying Betty Sue, I decided to speak to her. I needed to understand what was really going on. Besides, I reasoned, I had a right to speak to anyone I wanted to. I was not going to be intimidated, even though I was. I needed to establish the fact that I had not been intimidated. My chance came at the foot of the second stairwell for the school. We were passing each other. I spoke to her. She smiled and faced me. When I asked her if she was Russell's girlfriend, she said no. They had dated a little, but she wasn't going out with him anymore. Anyway, she reported he was just all talk. I shouldn't believe anything he said about her. She suggested that I talk with her at the next night's home basketball game. She would be sitting on the left-hand side of the bleachers as you walked into the basketball court. I said I might be attending the game. If I did, I would talk with her a little more about this. Right off, I knew that this would be trouble. I did not want to have anything to do with Betty Sue or Peggy Sue or whatever her name was. Well, yes, it was flattering to have a senior girl express interest in you, but it would infuriate Russell unless she had actually broken up with him. It wasn't until the night of the game that I decided to go. The point was to demonstrate that I was not intimidated. I did not really, I really didn't want to have anything to do with the girl. She might just be using me. My desire not to be intimidated overcame my good judgment. I saw her in the bleachers and sat beside her for about 5 minutes. She gave me no new information about her relationship with Russell. I left the building and went home. The next day greeted me with great apprehension. Was this the day I got my clock clean? No, it wasn't. The day passed without an encounter. Then the next day and the next week came and went. Russell never showed his face. The same was true for the next couple of weeks. Apparently, the incident was over. It was a relief. I was starting to fit in. My classmates were very nice and inviting. We all seemed to enjoy each other's company. This was far better than being just outside South Milwaukee, living in Racine County, Wisconsin. For some reason, that day, I had decided to stay late after the school day had ended. It was probably about one of the extracurricular activities I had signed up for. There were so many fun things to do at this school. All of the kids seemed to be glad to have me join them. I liked being here. I was just about to the end of the street beside the football field. At the corner, I turned right. In the middle of that block was our duplex. I walked fast to get out of the cold. Even with my heavy winter coat zipped up to the neck, I was still cold. Right in front of the little radio and TV repair shop on the corner, I heard someone call my name. Turning, I looked back towards the high school. Russell was running towards me. Wait up, he shouted, as he ran towards me with enough speed to slightly billow out his light jacket. He was smiling. For a brief moment, I puzzled as to why he was calling out to me. His smile told me he was not going to be a confrontation. He may well have learned the truth. I had nothing to do with his girlfriend and was not interested in her. His smile grew bigger as he came closer. Yes, my interpretation was correct. He was coming to apologize. I returned his smile as he slowed his running. He ran right up to me and stopped really close to me quickly, too quickly for me to step back. Hi, he said with his face almost touching mine. His right fist was traveling straight up my torso. Instinctively, I turned my head to the right and slightly arched my back away from the fast-rising uppercut. As his knuckles of his fist lightly brushed my cheek on its rush to the sky, I wrapped my arms around him, trapping his left arm to his side while leaving his right arm extended above his head. I was in a rage. He tried to deceive me, to deliver a sucker punch that would have knocked me out or worse. In our mutual rage, we wrestled in a tight embrace, quickly falling to the ground. All I could think about was hurting him as badly as I could. I was not working on a fighting strategy. I had no reason, no attempt to keep him from hurting me. I just wanted to hurt him as badly as I could. There was no thought of protecting myself from his fist. Hurt him. It was all the thought my mind could register. At one point in the desperate struggle, our prone bodies on the sidewalk, my left arm became free. His face was parallel with mine as they both hovered a few inches above the concrete. My fist shot in several times to connect to the side of his nose. I popped it 3, 4 times, maybe more. There was just enough room for me to draw my fist back 2 or 3 inches to deliver each blow. They came faster than he could turn his head to the side. Immediately his nose gushed blood. My heavy winter jacket was seriously restricting my freedom to move. I wanted to hit him with the full force of my fury. He twisted and turned, each trying to gain an advantage to land a blow. So far, he hadn't been able to free his arm enough to throw a punch. Suddenly, he was on top of me. He struggled to contain my arms as I continued to try to hurt him in any way I could. Hurt him, hurt him, hurt him, make him hurt was my only goal, my intense reason for existing. I had to hurt him. I was pinned. Both my arms were slightly above my shoulders as he held them by the wrist in a death-like grip, while straddling my chest with his legs. His nose was bleeding in a massive stream. The blood was striking my forehead just above the hairline and flowing down through my hair onto the sidewalk. Trying to raise my arms against the downward pressure of his hands and his body was too much. Instantaneously, my strength drained from me. All I could do was provide enough resistance to his hands with upward pressure so that he dare not release his hold on my wrist. He smiled at me and moved his head to direct the flow of his blood to the center of my forehead. I began to think. This rest was really helping me. My strength was coming back. In a minute or so, I knew I would be strong enough to throw him off. Then I would really, really hurt him. Go ahead. Let your blood flow onto my head, I thought as I smiled back. You are getting weaker as I am getting stronger. I've got you. You're mine. I could just punch out you. I could punch you now that you're pinned. Go ahead and try. As soon as you release my arm to pull back to punch, I've got you. You're mine now. He stopped smiling. I did not. My strength came rushing back. Hey, what's going on here? Shouted the man in the doorway of the store on the top of its landing. We both turned our heads toward this intrusion into our intensely isolated world. The man looked down at my head and exclaimed in horror, My God, you're killing him! All that blood! Oh my God, I'm calling the cops! He stated as he ran back inside the door. Russell sprang to his feet and took off running down the road. I jumped up and ran down the side street to my home. It was over. The next morning, the word was already out at school by the time I arrived. Russell and I had fought behind the football field. It seemed that everyone wanted to know the details. I told them as factually as I could. I told him that he had me pinned and his nose was spilling blood all over my head onto the sidewalk. I told them about our conversation at the inn, and then the store owner saying he was calling the police. I'm not sure, but I probably told them that I knew I had him beat and would have beaten him if the man had not intervened. I never lied. I never lied about it. I never exaggerated the telling of it. For the rest of the school year, I never saw Russell. The large, dark stain of his blood on the sidewalk was a daily reminder of the conflict. It remained etched into that concrete well into the summer. It was as if Russell had disappeared. I had no fear of seeing him or fighting him. I knew I could take him any time I wanted. I never saw Russell again, or the girl, until this encounter at the 50th reunion. This was the first time and last time I was ever involved in a fight in which I lost my reasoning. I was in a rage. Who knows how badly I could have hurt him if I had gotten free. I am grateful to the store owner for having stepped in. Without him, my life would have changed. I don't know how, but it would have been different. I must remember him in my prayers. The reunion picnic was winding down by late afternoon. People were becoming tired from all the talking and a little listening. Anna was in the park pavilion, sitting near the food tables, talking to the husband of a kindly classmate of mine. When I caught her eye, she intended to signal that I was ready to leave any time she was. Betty Sue came walking towards me with a camera in her hand, trailed by a female friend of hers. "Is it okay if Carol takes our picture together?" she asked with a bright smile, handing the camera to her. What can I say but yes? I can't say no because I don't know what's going on here. Why would you want to take your picture with me? I don't even know. I just don't know. What? We talked to each other twice for no more than a total of 10 minutes 53 years ago? And now you want your picture taken with me? What's going on? Sure, that will be fine, was my pleasant response as she sidled up next to me. The flash, we smiled at each other as we said goodbye and went our separate ways. Shortly afterwards, Anna joined me. What was the picture taking all about? Now, what could I do? Say no? She had asked to take my picture earlier, Anna said in reply. I told her no, that I didn't like my picture to be taken, and I don't. I know you don't. Well, I was pleasant about it, and she was too. Good, at least I'm free to tell Tom the story. With Russell dead, I won't be betraying his myth. Be careful. You don't want to hurt the woman. You're right. If I catch Tom by himself, I'll tell him. Otherwise, I'll tell him some other time. I'd really like him to know the truth about me and the fight. All he probably remembers is that conversation in the car. I want him to know that I never lied about it. I couldn't go into the details of it in the car and undermine Russell on his home turf. Changing the topic, I went on. I saw Tom and Joan drive off a little while ago. Let's hang around for a few minutes and see if they come back. Besides, Jim wants us to see his racing video. It's about 10 minutes long. If they're not back soon, we'll just say our goodbyes. It's waited this long. A little longer won't make any difference. It was agreed. We went to see Jim's video. He wanted several of his good old high school buddies to watch it. This was clearly his thing. The camera had been placed somewhere on the dashboard of his car as he raced around the track. He was proud of the fact that he had started out in 44th place and finished in 14th. When the CD had finished, Ann and I began the ritual of saying goodbye. We had a 10-hour drive the next day to get home. We needed to have our rest. As we walked out of the pavilion, with the last goodbye said, I saw Tom standing in the lawn a few yards from us talking to a couple of guys. Everyone always wants to talk to Tom. We looked up to him in high school, and we valued him now. I'll talk to him another time, I said to Anna as we started towards the parking lot. The two guys talking to Tom walked away from him. As he turned, he looked up to see Anna and me. A big smile across his face as he strode over to greet us. You're not leaving already? He asked, reading our intentions. Yes, we need to get an early start tomorrow. Hasn't it been great? He beamed. Yes, it has, both Anna and I affirmed. A strange thing happened earlier today. Oh, do tell, Tom blurted out with his signature smile. I explained about this woman from the class 2 years before ours, saying she had come to this reunion specifically to apologize to me. He didn't recognize her name, but immediately recognized Russell Hampton's last name. So what did she want to apologize about? Came the more serious words. You remember that fight that he and I had right after I arrived our sophomore year? Yeah. And then the time of the 30th reunion when Sam, Joe, you and I were driving that night after the beer bus to get a late night breakfast, and Joe said that he had talked to Russell, and Russell said that he had me pinned and won the fight until the store owner chased us off. Joe asked why I let everyone think I'd won the fight. I spilled it out in too rapid a speech pattern. Tom looked puzzled. He replied, No, I don't remember that at all. Did that really happen? I tried to rush through a brief version of the story. All of the drama was out of my narrative, except for my rapid speech pattern, making for bland conversation. Tom was polite, but clearly not interested, as he commented frequently, I just don't remember this at all. Did this really happen? During the conversation, Joan, his wife, joined us. What did I just miss? She shot in. I replied. Earlier today, someone gave me a great lead-in to a short story I might write someday. It's too long to repeat now. I'll have to send you a copy of it once it's written. We all said our goodbyes. I was free.